Content warning. The following video contains material that may be harmful or traumatizing to some audiences. Mon, the 24th of April, 2023, 21 hour, 22 minutes, and 23 seconds. Anonymous 4. Chan user claims to have knowledge informations about UFOs and the American government. Quote, "We must ask ourselves, are they really a hoax? Are we truly alone? Or are we being lied to?" Fox Mulder, The X-Files. Quote, "The truth is out there, but so are lies." Dana Scully, The X-Files.
I have intimate knowledge of what the U.S. currently knows about UFOs minus the last 2 years. UFOs are primarily unmanned drones. UFOs are built to spec each time they are deployed. UFOs are created by a mobile construction facility that hides in the ocean. Construction facility destroys anything that comes close to it and will disappear for days when approached aggressively. U.S. believes the facility has been active on Earth for at least 100 years or much longer.
What is the main body of government that is collecting information on UFOs? The DoD, if so, which branch is the most active in collection of information?
It doesn't officially exist, and I won't use the internal name on here either.
What about biological entities? Are all UFOs come from the same source? I think there's probably more factions/groups of them.
The U.S. seems to believe so, yes. There have been encounters, but my information is limited since my specialty lies elsewhere.
Does this have any relation to Oumuamua?
No.
Is there a working theory on the origins, if so, care to elaborate?
Quite a bit. But we think the construction facility has been around since at least 4000 BC. See sightings, paintings from the early eras of history.
Has any form of intelligible communication been established?
Yes, it also depends on your viewpoint. They mostly want very little to do with us until we start to talk about war and nuclear options. It's one of the reasons why you see them so often at critical events.
What is creating these craft? Any potential that they are made by a higher branch of the U.S. government? What allows them to fly so fast? What technology?
Yes, as mentioned earlier, the Mobile Construction Unit is responsible for their deployment and construction. Any potential that they are made by a higher branch of the U.S. government? Absolutely not. What allows them to fly so fast? What technology? Gravity manipulation and the materials they are constructed from.
They are piloted by an undersea intelligence, aren't they?
We think the construction unit is driven by AI. The response time to threats is almost instant, and usually very calculated and well thought out.
Is it related to that one under rock in that one Scandinavian country? The one that deploys within tectonic spaces?
No. This one almost never leaves the Bermuda Triangle.
Bullshit. Governments have, and have had for a while, advanced anti-gravity crafts.
You asked if the particular UFOs we study are the result of a foreign government, not if other governments have shittier versions. Speed alone tells us what we are looking at.
Do the UAPs return back to the manufacturing unit?
Yes, some come in and leave the planet, but very rarely. Usually the same number that comes in goes out unless special circumstances arise. It feels more like a carrier, but with construction capability.
What are the purposes of the UAPs? Surveillance of humans?
The U.S. believes they are not here to harm us. They only seem interested in us once they realize we are destroying things around us, including each other. One of the officials in charge said something that stuck with me. They act like keepers of a zoo, uninterested in the daily life of wildlife, until there's a problem.
I can approach that facility without being attacked. Am I of any value to the USIC? And how would I reach out to them for this? I won't provide details on why, but I am not the only one capable of approaching it. I know of 2 others. I'm willing to do so, if they want me to.
LOL. The last unit we saw approach the facility didn't even have time to communicate. They were being attacked before it was over.
What's buried under the mesa on Skinwalker Ranch? Is that show even legitimate? It seems like some of the most legitimate research on anything paranormal that I've ever seen in my life, and I'm very curious about what they seem to be finding.
No idea that the project, if any, is likely kept separate.
There were 2 rare elements found fused together that were under the mesa, and I'm very curious what's going on there.
No idea about that either. The crafts we recover are built with numerous elements. Some aren't even obtainable here.
Are they friends?
They cut their losses when crashes are recovered. Same with personnel. Zookeepers aren't friends with the animals.
Do you know if the entities behind the UFOs are native to the Earth? Like an older civilization, breakaway civilization, or a civilization of humans that escaped a previous cycle of cataclysm due to their advanced tech?
Limited expertise since my role is more craft analysis. US believes they are foreign to our world. A previous cataclysm could make sense. They also show up in times of strife such as natural events.
Also, I think that other guy who was talking about approaching the area without being attacked is a remote viewer.
I lurked on other boards but haven't really been to this one since I was comfortable with the answers I had. I wasn't aware that was a thing on here. There were rumors among my coworkers that they had psionic abilities, but honestly, it rarely comes up in a conversation. Give it a shot?
Have you tried sending in a raft of hippies? The AI may not recognize them as a threat, JK.
Based on previous disappearances and acts of hostility, we believe the construction facility, carrier, has learned what is and isn't hostile. Usually it will just move away or stay deep under the water. It doesn't fire on civilian boats, for example. Exceptions apply. We have seen one or two go missing, usually after sharp turns, etc.
Any relation to Antarctica?
My section monitored just this craft and any interactions it attempted. A previous coworker did mention something in passing of Antarctica at one point, but I ignored it if I'm being honest. Talking about other projects is considered career suicide.
How about the destination of the space orbs? Is Jupiter a potential destination? I believe they are keeping a massive orb inside of the gas giant, though I have no evidence but many dreams of it.
No idea. If it is a project, I haven't seen it. No orbs out of the construction facility, just UFOs.
What units have been lost approaching this construction machine? Why have they not sent a Seawolf to investigate? The Jimmy Carter with its nanotech.
Everything you can think of, really. At one point, nuclear missiles were being toyed with again, and we deployed fighters and a sub with serious intent. Everything except the sub was lost.
How have they come to the conclusion the UAP being released are ET? If they don't know what the UAP are to begin with them, or if there is nothing inside them, it's a pretty big jump to go right to ET.
They crash sometimes, parts fail, and gravity engines near the surface of the planet can be like crossing an intersection. We recover these, and sometimes find passengers. We mostly see drones now. Back in the earlier days, we saw a lot more piloted craft.
Why, do you not know anything about the last 2 years? Just curious.
Moved on from the project, because of new management that didn't trust older proven methods.
Also, LOL, the last unit we saw approach the facility didn't even have time to communicate. They were being attacked before it was over. Any details on what happened?
Normal approach details, pilot responsive and actively talking. The feed cuts out pilot still talking. Suddenly nothing. Poor guy likely had no idea it was likely a suicide mission. Based on what we've seen, the construction facility has far superior weapons than the UFOs do. This weapon destroys the matter it hits entirely. It also shits on anything electronic in the vicinity.
The contents and equipment usually mimic the intended purpose too, like the equipment share a pattern specific to its purpose?
Yes, usually when we find a thinner model, for example, it would have no pilot and a lot of sensory hardware. My favorite is finding one that is fitted for research. If we are lucky, we find things we have never seen before. Before I left, we were looking at what we thought was a lab of some kind for genetics.
Are you talking about the one shaped like a pear or a burger?
Be more specific?
Disregard, it's the burger ones, isn't it?
Size, shape, and speed are usually the factors we use to determine what the purpose of the UFO is. We get it wrong sometimes. They can be quite large, and both pear and burger shapes are known builds.
Is this the burger-shaped ones or the pear-shaped ones?
Both.
I've had 2 orange orbs approach me to within 100 feet one night. Glowing translucent, but rather dim like the setting sun seen through smog. They were flying in 45-degree formation like this, about 50 miles per hour.
Research science vessels sometimes have mobile light-producing cameras, used for multiple purposes from scouting to keeping threats contained or at bay. These are shaped like hammers, and when operated are extremely bright. Red lights are a sign of hostility or caution to deploy weapons. Orange lights are usually for spotting minerals or living things.
As soon as I blinked my flashlight at them, they accelerated to several thousand knots and disappeared over the horizon. Searched YouTube and found several videos of the same objects, mostly near San Diego.
I'm not surprised, the range on those is quite large. The UFO was likely somewhere above you, quite high up.
Is the underwater base near Catalina Island creating these?
No, this one has only left the Atlantic Ocean twice. Both times were before I arrived.
Are aliens human or humanoid?
Humanoid, very humanoid.
Then, do you know anything about abductions, forced breeding programs, etc.?
Bodies are removed before we are allowed to perform work. We definitely see some passing by, hence changes in older proven methods by new management.
Also, real true disclosure anytime soon?
The Air Force is extremely frustrated with the lack of progress on their end. We felt similar, but are unable to share details with them.
So I'd assume this was a sort of AI design that seems to be advanced yet already prepared for the get-go.
Can you rephrase this? Basically, when designed to, let's say, be a miner, you will usually see hardware dedicated to resource collection on the vessel. If the vessel is something scientific, you may encounter things like tools, and as previously mentioned, something akin to a lab. We thought of it more as a, I need to go hiking, so the construction facility builds you a car, UFO, and packs it full of hiking supplies, and even adjusts the shape to fit what was packed.
Do you think there are fewer piloted crafts because the population of the facility, if any, is declining?
No, the common consensus is that they are just being careful. I've heard recovery of living pilots usually doesn't go well for either of us. We suspect they piloted a lot of initial craft due to early complications. We also saw more crashes.
Any bodies recovered show any ranges of aging we can recognize? I wonder if most of the inhabitants are either old or dead at this point, though younger bodies would disprove that, I suppose.
No idea about age, not my specialty, and asking about it would have been a net negative, especially now. Previous higher-ups were getting better about being open with information since discovery happened quicker.
What do the passengers look like? Are they biological and/or android?
Bio.
Do you know anything about people such as Stephen Greer, Lou Elizondo, or whatever, etc.? Are these people in the know, or LARPers, or controlled misinfo, etc.?
No idea. One name sticks out you didn't mention. Mentioning Bob Lazar by name would likely have you taken out back and put down like a dog. Do the math on why.
Out of everything ever found regarding UFOs in general, what is your personal favorite?
New engine was deployed with a very large model that I had never seen before. We usually see 3 to 5 gravity-producing engines. This one had 7. Favorite object or find? Probably the lab, since we never fully understood how it worked before it was destroyed.
Makes me wonder whether a meaningful distinction between scientific study and amusement still exists for them, if it ever did.
This was before my time, but they talked about a bus UFO that had more occupants than hardware. Most of the intended purpose appeared to be for physical viewing. I wondered if they ever just wanted to look at the animals.
How long until we can hang with aliens?
Have any retarded cousins that destroy everything they touch? When do you want to see them again?
This is a strangely recurrent theme. At a minimum, they have psychotronic devices of some sort.
This reminded me of something in my first year. UFO crashes, they remove the bodies well before my team arrives. We start to look, and the craft is unpowered at first. A few minutes later, the craft powers on and starts to close up. We radio out and get a response from the unit removing one of the occupants, alien, that they are working on it. Ship powers off, and the other team asks if we are good to go. No mention of how access was possible. I suspect the pilot may have interfaced with the ship by remote or psionic ability.
Not really translucent, but maybe the outer shell was. They definitely had an inner core that wasn't see-through.
Lots of tools they use produce light. If this is still about the orb, the shell you may have seen was just the light around the device I called the hammer.
It's suggested that the ones with beings in it may be some sort of projection illusion.
Genuinely curious what the fuck you are on about.
Are there more than one construction facility? You mentioned one in the Bermuda Triangle. However, there are a lot of USOs off of the west coast of the Americas as well. Any insight?
I suspect there may be, since we only watch the Atlantic Ocean and the UFOs we track normally don't stray far from home base. Asking about it would have been a bad move.
I'm talking about the MCUs. Are you talking about the one in the Pacific or the Arctic?
Atlantic, I don't know of others. The mention of something in the Arctic was weird and brief when it came up.
Is the MCU you are talking about a burger shape or a pear shape? Need to know.
Burgerish? I misunderstood and thought you meant the UFOs, not the carrier construction facility.
OP talk about hybridization of the human race. Pro tip, you're a shill or UI, if you only knew how bad things are.
I wouldn't fuck my retarded cousin, but I also understand I'm on 4chan.
I read somewhere some UFO navigation systems require an ET whose own personal wavelength has been specifically attuned to the neural network of the craft.
This tracks somewhat for me. When we look at the craft, we usually have to force certain things to work. 2 teams come behind mine, so that could be dedicated to understanding of the craft.
Can you tell us what they look like physically? Usual gray type or big ears?
Imagine the typical grays you see on TV. I've seen 2 corpses, so maybe they're a different species, but I've never laid eyes on another.
Anything about their culture, name, etc.?
Rumors mostly. They almost never want anything to do with us. Mentions of destruction or warfare apparently change their attitude pretty quickly.
Why did the UFOs fuck up all those people in Brazil? Was it by accident of them not knowing we'd be damaged by their equipment, or do they not care? Do you believe we are under their control in some way? Or where sometime in history?
Why did the UFOs fuck up all those people in Brazil? Sauce? Might let me give you more insight.
Was it by accident of them not knowing we'd be damaged by their equipment, or do they not care?
If found, they usually monitor us. If approached at an uncomfortable distance, they flee. When cornered, it doesn't end well. Their tools can do harm to us even for just scientific purposes. We think they just don't care.
Do you believe we are under their control in some way? Or where sometime in history?
Possibly, but I have no way of knowing. The higher-ups I worked for seemed hell-bent on discovering more about them. Usually not a quality found among controlled beings.
What were the main reasons for the crashes? I'd think random lightning or freak accidents, seeing how advanced they are.
You'd be surprised how many mistakes they make, especially the further back you look. One area they seem to avoid like the plague we suspect is due to issues with gravity and flight. Before they figured it out, we collected quite a few mishaps there. They've tried to shoot some down mostly over nuclear incidents, but failed miserably.
Did you see written symbols in the craft?
Yes, usually marked by doorways and key objects. Written language appears frequently on tools and critical items.
Also, it reads like, their objective is to observe and preserve.
I agree. The idea was pitched that they are waiting for us to mature, or perhaps something bigger to arrive, and they don't want us to ruin the planet in the meantime.
What do you believe to be the reason for the uptick in sightings?
Once again, my knowledge was cut off about 2 years ago. If you mean very recently, my guess would be the Russians and US having a little secret dance amongst themselves. When nuclear anything gets involved, we see large deployments for long periods of time. Strife seems to be the catalyst.
Also, what is your scariest experience while engaging with the phenomenon? What was your favorite, if any?
Doors closing on us, as mentioned above, made me wish I had brown pants. Still fascinated with the lab we found. It was damaged by accident, and I never really got much time with it.
Are you aware of any foreign AIY tech that was successfully reverse-engineered?
Yes, we used to laugh at Russian and Chinese designs. We stopped laughing at China when they produced an operational, but buggy version of their mining equipment. Still stumps most of our engineers. China also lies out of its ass. But from what we saw, we deemed it operational and working. Countries listed above have flight-capable craft, just not very good ones. I'm honestly surprised no one has asked about the energy source or internals. Heading out for the night, but we'll be on tomorrow to answer more.
Part 2 coming soon.